Hello, and welcome to Learn English Through Current Affairs, the podcast where we explore fascinating topics while helping you improve your English skills. I'm Magdalena, and today we're diving into a topic that affects many of us: perfectionism. Our discussion is inspired by an insightful article from Psychology Today titled "Why Perfectionism is a Trap," written by Arash Imamzadeh and published on November 5, 2024. The article explores the challenges of perfectionism, contrasts it with striving for excellence, and offers valuable advice for finding balance in our lives. Let's dive in. First, let's define perfectionism. According to Arash Imamzadeh's article, perfectionism involves setting unrealistically high standards and being overly critical when those standards aren't met. It's not simply about doing your best, it's a fixation on being flawless. The article highlights a study by researchers at the University of Ottawa, which distinguishes between perfectionism and excellencism. Perfectionism is about chasing impossible standards, often leading to self-doubt and burnout. Excellencism, on the other hand, is the pursuit of high yet attainable standards in a flexible and balanced way. As Imamzadeh explains, perfect may be the enemy of good, but excellence may be the cure for perfect. So, what makes perfectionism so harmful? The article shares the story of Natalie Chernish, a former competitive swimmer and Brown University graduate. She recalls how pushing herself too hard, training, studying, and maxing out on extracurriculars left her burned out. During the pandemic, she realized she wasn't being present in her life. Her mother's advice struck a chord. "You're not a robot." This simple truth helped Natalie understand that striving for perfection isn't sustainable, and she began embracing mindfulness and balance. Perfectionism doesn't just affect individuals, it can also strain relationships. As Gregory Chasson, an associate professor at the University of Chicago, explains in the same article, perfectionists often exhibit behaviors like safety behaviors, constantly rechecking work or seeking reassurance. Moralism, holding rigid standards for themselves and others. These tendencies can frustrate colleagues, friends, and family. Chasson suggests thinking of social interactions as bank accounts. Every action either deposits into or withdraws from these accounts. Before imposing perfectionistic expectations on others, consider the potential social cost. Now let's practice some key phrases from today's discussion. Perfectionism, the tendency to set unrealistic goals and judge oneself harshly. Excellencism, striving for high but attainable standards in a flexible way. Self-compassion, being kind to yourself, especially when facing challenges. Practice using these phrases in a sentence. For example, excellencism encourages balance and growth, while perfectionism often leads to burnout. Now, let's talk about how perfectionism can impact our daily lives in ways we may not even realize. Perfectionism often leads to something called paralysis by analysis. Have you ever spent so much time worrying about getting every detail right that you never actually start or finish a project? That's the hallmark of perfectionism. For example, imagine you're preparing for a job interview. Instead of focusing on practicing answers and building confidence, you're obsessing over having the perfect resume. While some level of care is important, Perfectionism can drain your energy and leave you feeling more anxious than prepared. Here's something to think about. What could you achieve if you allowed yourself to focus on progress rather than perfection? Let's contrast this with excellencism, the healthier, more balanced alternative. People who strive for excellence set high standards, but they remain realistic and flexible. They focus on doing their best without being overly critical. Here's a simple mindset shift you can try. Instead of saying, "This must be perfect," try saying, "This will be good enough to get the job done." This doesn't mean settling for mediocrity. It means accepting that mistakes are part of growth. Let's explore a real-life story that shows the difference between these two mindsets. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was famously known for his perfectionism. But what many people don't know is that his greatest breakthroughs often came from his ability to focus on the big picture rather than obsessing over every detail. Jobs' drive for excellence, rather than unattainable perfection, allowed him to lead teams and innovate products like the iPhone and MacBook. His story reminds us that striving for excellence can lead to remarkable achievements, while perfectionism can sometimes slow us down. Think about your own life. Are there areas where perfectionism might be holding you back? What could you accomplish if you embraced the mindset of excellence instead? Let's delve even deeper into how perfectionism can shape our relationships with others. Did you know that perfectionism isn't just something we apply to ourselves? There's something called other-oriented perfectionism, where we expect those around us, friends, family, or colleagues, to meet impossibly high standards. This can lead to frustration, tension, and even damaged relationships. For instance, if you're constantly pointing out a colleague's mistakes or expecting your partner to always be perfect, you might unintentionally create distance. Relationships thrive on understanding and flexibility, not judgment. On the flip side, when we embrace excellencism, we not only show compassion to ourselves, but also to others. It allows us to appreciate people's efforts, even if the results aren't flawless. Now, let's talk about perfectionism in education and learning English. Many of you listening today might feel the pressure to speak English perfectly. You might hesitate to join conversations because you're afraid of making mistakes. But here's the thing. Mistakes are the best way to learn. Think about how children learn their first language. They don't worry about grammar or pronunciation at first. They just speak. Over time, they improve because they're willing to try, fail, and try again. So here's a challenge for you. The next time you practice English, focus on communicating your message, not on getting every word or sentence perfect. Let's address a common question. How can I overcome perfectionism? Here are some practical tips. Set realistic goals. Break large tasks into smaller, manageable steps. For example, instead of aiming to speak English fluently in 3 months, focus on learning 5 new words a day or practicing one conversation. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Reward yourself for trying, even if the result isn't flawless. Did you join a conversation in English, even if you made a mistake? That's progress worth celebrating. Adopt the 80/20 rule. Focus on the 20% of efforts that will bring you 80% of results. Instead of obsessing over minor details, prioritize actions that make the biggest impact. Seek feedback. Constructive feedback from peers or teachers is a valuable tool for growth. Practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that no one is perfect, and that's okay. Let's address a common question. How can I overcome perfectionism? Here are some practical tips. Set realistic goals. Break large tasks into smaller, manageable steps. Let's consider another real-world example. Perfectionism in the workplace. Many employees, especially those new to their roles, feel the need to prove themselves by delivering perfect results. But research shows that this mindset often leads to burnout. A healthier approach is to focus on learning from mistakes and collaborating with others. When you allow yourself to be human, you create an environment where creativity and innovation thrive. Here's something to reflect on. How does your approach to work, whether it's perfectionism or excellencism, affect your productivity and relationships with colleagues? Now, let's practice a few more key phrases from today's episode. Repeat after me. Progress is more important than perfection. Mistakes are opportunities to grow. Celebrating small wins builds confidence. Before we wrap up, let's quickly summarize what we've discussed today. Perfectionism can hold us back in many areas of life, from relationships to work to learning new skills. Excellencism is a healthier alternative that encourages high standards without the stress of unrealistic expectations. Small, actionable steps, like embracing mistakes, setting realistic goals, and celebrating progress, can help you move past perfectionism and towards success. Now I have a few questions for you. What's one area of your life where you've struggled with perfectionism? How will you practice progress over perfection this week? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a community where we can learn from each other and support one another's growth. Don't forget to like this podcast, to support the channel, subscribe to English with Magdalena for more motivational and educational episodes. Share this episode with a friend who might benefit from it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I'm Magdalena, and I can't wait to hear your stories and reflections. Until next time, take care and keep learning. Goodbye.